Welcome back to another Acceptable Casualties battle report. Today we have 1,500 points of fighting withdrawal between the British 11th Armour and the Panzergrenadierkompanie. We'll be back in a second to go over the list for both armies. So first up, we have our 1,500 points of British Armoured Squadron out of the Market Garden book. That's going to be 11th Armoured. Down here we have our 1IC and 2IC in Shermans. Over here we have 3 identical platoons that all have the Firefly and 2 regular Shermans and a 50 cal on each of the sergeants. Over here we have our Daimler and 1 Sawn-Off. Back there we have some Dingoes. Over here we have a platoon of Universal Carriers. And over here we have a limited air support Typhoon. Altogether it's 1,500 points of British 11th Armour. We'll be back in a second to go over the German list. So here we have our 1,500 points of the German Panzergrenadiers out of Grey Wolf. Up here we have our 1IC and 2IC in half tracks. Each of them have the Faust. Down here we have 2 platoons of half tracks, and each of the commanders in those have Faust as well. Down here we have 2 of the flame tracks. We have 3 Panthers. We have 2 flak tracks. 2 more Pack 40s, and over here we have our Nebelwerfers with Observer. Altogether it's about 1,500 points. Be back in a second to go over deployment and get this thing started. So we are back for the end of our deployment phase. I'm going to start with the British 11th Armored first, and then we'll work our way down to the Germans. Up here we have 2 of our platoons of Shermans with the Fireflies and the 1IC in between them in the back over there, looking to probably push up along the rail line over here and make a play for one of these 2 objectives down here. Over on this part right here we have the other platoon of Shermans with the 2IC, and then on the road they're going to be supported by the Universal Carriers and the Dingoes, probably making the look a push up here, and then I don't know, we'll see what happens from there if we can get over here before Vin pulls one of these objectives off. And over here in the lonely corner by themselves, we got the armored cars. Probably just going to make a push up through the fields over here, try to keep Vin honest on this side of the table. That's pretty much all we have right now for the British 11th Armour. Coming down here for the Germans, Vin decided to pull his guys out of the half tracks and dig them in. So he has one of the platoons here on that objective. And then he has the Panthers, the flak tracks, and the flame wagons all kind of huddled down on this part of the table right here behind that central hill. And then over here we have the other platoon of the Panzer Grenadiers hunkered down around that objective, and they're going to be supported by the Nebelwerfers over here. Vin decided to keep the Pack 40s in ambush, so we'll see them probably at the bottom of turn 1. There's a lot of open areas on this table, so they'll probably come out early and come out firing. So we'll be back in a second for top of turn 1 for the Brits. Back in a flash. So we are back for the top of turn 1 for the Brits. Overall, pretty good turn for us. The movement phase, we ended up pushing up both platoons over here with the 1 Firefly from the 1 platoon and the 2IC, just pushed them up around there. We were able to get in range at 32 inches with that Firefly, so we just parked them there and got that reroll for the long distance shooting, semi-indirect fire. Over here we pushed up our other platoon of Shermans up here around the hill to try to get a little better position maybe for next turn to make a move. We moved up the Dingoes and Universal Carriers to fire a bunch of shots into the infantry platoon down here. And we moved our Daimler ones and the Sawn-Off up through the fields on this side. We did roll for our plane. He did come in with 3 planes. Vin had 12 shots.
Yep.
12 shots for the anti-air. I think he only hit on 6, and he didn't hit any for the firepower test. So I had 3 planes, finished with 3 planes, and we were able to blow up one of them, the flak tracks, and then I think, did I fail my firepower for?
No, I made my save.
Oh, you made your save on that one. So for the rest of the shooting, we were able to bail out the 1 Panther here. Vin ended up rolling pretty decent for his saves against those Fireflies and ended up paying off for him pretty well. We blew up one of the other flak tracks over here with the Shermans firing from down over there. Up over here, we were able to pin this Panzer Grenadier platoon with just the machine gun fire from all the tanks, all the half tracks. I mean, all the universal carriers and all the dingoes. And then up over here for the Daimlers, since Vim was dug in, gone to ground, starting the game, that 24-inch shot really wasn't able to do anything because I needed sevens to hit. So that's the top of turn one for the Brits. We'll be back in a second for bottom one Germans. So we are back for bottom of turn one for the Germans. Not a lot of movement going over here. Vin was able to get his guy back in, the one Panther down there. Everybody stayed still except for the flame tracks. They moved around that hill a little bit more to kind of get out of the sight of some of the Shermans over there. Vin did pop his ambush at Pack 40s right here. And I guess we'll just go over the shooting phase. The Pack 40s, they fired 2 shots down on the universal carriers. Vin had 2 hits, and he failed both firepowers, so they're just bailed out, which is pretty awesome. Over here, I think it was one of these two. I think it was this one right here. Fired a shot down into the Shermans over there, and Vin was able to blow up one of the Shermans in the back. The Panther here fired down there at the Firefly, missed both shots, and then the other Panther here fired into that group of Shermans right there, and he missed both shots. The Nebelwerfers on this side were able to range in on the armored cars down here, but Vin failed to get any hits on them at all, so that kind of saved my bacon for this turn. So a lot of missed opportunities here. Hopefully we can make them pay for them, but I'm not feeling too good staring down 3 Panthers with just a couple of Shermans. But we'll be back for the top of turn 2, see if we get that plane back on and maybe even things out a little bit. So we are back here for top of turn 2 for the Brits. For our plane, we had them come in and we did get 3. And since there's no anti-air left on the table, we got to shoot with 3, which is pretty nice. For the movement phase, we ended up swinging up and around here with the 1 IC and the 2 Shermans from the 1 platoon, and the other 2 Shermans we pushed up along the railroad tracks. We ended up keeping both of our Fireflies back there so we can get that semi-indirect fire with 2 shots. So over here, we ended up staying still with everything over here, just trying to play the position game on this part of the table for right now until we get everything else in position to make our push. And then over here, we ended up moving up the Daimlers a little bit as well. Shooting phase, we fired 2 shots down from the Daimlers with their gun, and we hit the Nebelwerfers, but they were able to make their 5-up save, so they stayed alive. We fired a bunch of machine gun shots from the Dingoes, the Universal Carriers, who both jumped back in as well, and we weren't able to really do anything down here to the Panzergrenadiers that were dug in. We fired a couple of semi-indirect shots down here into the Nebelwerfers from the Shermans, and we weren't able to do anything with them as well. The Firefly, we fired across over here, and we were able to blow up one of the Panthers. Our other Firefly, well, the combination of the 2, firing down at this Panther down here, we were able to blow him up as well. The Shermans over here, they just fired a bunch of cannon and machine gun shots down here to the infantry, and we weren't able to really peel anybody off with that. And with the plane, if you look over here, we were able to blow up and force a morale test for the flamer tracks. So one of them had to peel off. We blew one up and bailed one, so they had to take the test. And then we were able to take out another one of the Pack 40s, and Vin failed his 5-up save, and we were able to dig him out with the rockets. So that unit's pinned there as well. So overall, pretty good turn for us. The Panthers, actually the one remaining one before I forget, he failed his motivation, so he ended up fleeing off the field. So overall, really good turn for us, but, there's still full platoons of infantry sitting here on these objectives, and, I do have Shermans, so nothing's a safe bet at this point. But we'll be back in a second for bottom of turn 2 for the Germans. So we are back for the bottom of turn 2 for the Germans. As far as movement phase goes, Vin was able to unpin down here on the Pack 40s and unpin them. Everybody else kind of just stayed in their foxholes waiting for the final assault. In the shooting phase, both of the Panzergrenadier platoons stayed gone to ground. The Nebelwerfers fired a barrage up here onto the armored cars, and they got a couple of hits. We didn't look in the rule book. I'm not 100% sure on this. Maybe you guys can help me out down in the comments. But Vin did get 2 hits. I made both of the saves, but we played it as pinned down because their top armor is 0, and I think that's how the rule goes, but I'm not 100% sure. So if you guys can hit me up on the comments and let me know, or maybe I'll look it up in the rules after this tonight. But yeah, if you guys could just put it in there anyway, that would be great. So yeah, they got 2 hits, but nothing happened, so we just marked it as a pin. Down here for the Pack 40s, the Pack 40, he was able to blow up one of the Shermans, and I failed the motivation for the Firefly for the last man standing. So he ended up, not last man standing, for the morale test, and he ended up going off the table. So that's pretty much all that happened for shooting there. We're down one platoon of Shermans, but I think we got enough on the table to make a push for at the top of turn 3. So we'll be back in a second for the Brits' top 3. So we are back for the top of turn 3 for the Brits. In our movement phase, we tried to get the plane on, but we ended up failing our reserve rolls. We ended up staying put with this platoon over here, and we brought up our Firefly, who was stationed back over there. With the other Sherman platoon, we pushed up the railway and made our play for this middle objective over here. We took the 2IC, who was on that side of the table. We swung him around the back side of the hill to make a play on this objective right here, help support that attack. Down here, we used the dingoes to pull the gun on the ground off the Panzergrenadiers that were sitting on this objective, and then we fired a bunch of machine gun shots from universal carriers, and we ended up getting a PIM but no casualties. And then from the Daimler one, and I was out of range with the dingo. With the sawn-off. So we fired 2 shots down from the Daimler one, and we ended up missing on both of them, and the other one stayed pinned. Well, the unit as a whole stayed pinned. So overall, we just made our push for this objective here. Vin's going to have to come out of the foxholes and make a play on this. So we'll be back in a second for bottom of turn 3 for the Germans. So we are back here for bottom of turn 3 for the Germans. In the movement phase, Vin was able to unpin the platoon that was sitting over here. And then down here, Vin decided to take half of his platoon and make a push for that objective over there. In the shooting phase, the Pack 40 down here fired 2 shots over in the Shermans, and he ended up missing both of them. And then the Nebelwerfers down here failed to range in on the armored car platoon on that side of the table. So overall, pretty uneventful turn. But Vin's hanging in there, just hoping to start peeling off some of these objectives. He can hang around for a couple more. So we'll be back in a second for top of turn 4 for the Brits. So we are back for the top of turn 4 for the Brits. We once again failed to have the plane come in our movement. We kind of just pushed our Shermans up here to make assaults on the 2 Allied objectives on this side. Over here, we also moved up our Daimlers and the sawn-off to get a little bit closer for next turn. In the shooting phase, we failed to do our skill test for eyes and ears, so they stayed dug in, gone to ground over here. We fired a bunch of machine gun shots from universal carriers, and then a couple of shots when we here from the Daimlers and the sawn-off. We were only able to, peel off 1 guy, I think, from this one? Yeah, so we killed 1 guy from this platoon. Not enough to get a pin, though. Over here, we had our Shermans from this platoon open up on all the Germans that were sitting out there on the railroad tracks trying to contest that objective, and we ended up killing 3 of the bases, and then an assault went in, and we failed both hits, but Vin failed his tank terror, so he had to back off. So he's sitting there pinned right now. Over here, the hero of the day, the 1IC, he ended up weathering a pretty heavy assault there from 3 tanks. It was 2 Shermans and a Firefly. Went up there, we ended up killing 2 of the infantry bases, and then he ended up getting a blow up on the Firefly, and then one of the other guys ended up getting a bail on the other Sherman, and that forced me to take a morale test after the combat, and I ended up fleeing, and Vin ended up just staying dug in on the ground, and they're pinned down. So it's going to be back here for bottom of turn 4 for the Germans. They're going to have to do something big here, I think. I don't know if that luck's going to hold up for another turn, but we'll see. Be back in a flash. So we are back for bottom of turn 4 for the Germans. Vin had to withdraw 1 platoon. He ended up taking out his Nebelwerfers. In the movement phase, everybody pretty much stayed still except for the 2IC he pushed around over here, and then Vin dug in and went to ground with the 1 remaining guy from that group that broke off before. Shooting phase, Pack 40 ended up firing a couple shots down at the universal carriers, and he ended up missing on both of them. Everybody else, like I said, stayed gone to ground. So we're going to come back in a second for top of turn 5 for the Brits, and hopefully we can start steamrolling some of these infantrymen that are sitting on these objectives. So we are back for the top of turn 5 for the Brits. We failed to get the plane in again. For the movement phase, we ended up just staying still with the 1IC who's left over on that flank. the Firefly we kept there, and we ended up pushing up over here with our 2 Shermans and 2 IC. On this side, we ended up pushing up a little bit with the Universal Carriers, and we pushed up with the Armored Cars. Shooting phase, we really didn't do too much. We kind of just, we dug him out in the shooting phase with the Firefly in the back. We fired a couple shots down here in the 2 IC while he was running across, but we weren't able to hit anything. On this side, between the Universal Carriers and the Daimlers, we fired a bunch of shots down here. Did we kill one guy again, I think?
Yeah.
Right. Kill one guy again, and then we ended up coming in for assaults. With the Daimlers first, we were able to do 1 casualty, but we ended up getting a bail from the Faust in Overwatch. And then with the Universal Carriers, we also assaulted with them after we pushed the Panzergrenadierkompanie back, and Vin was able to hit on enough machine gun shots to beat us back with 5 hits, I think he had, and he was able to punch one of those shots through on a failed save by me, and he rolled a 6 for his firepower, so we blew up one of the Universal Carriers. Down here, I tried assaulting with the 2 IC on his 2 IC, and he ended up hitting me with the Faust, but he only ended up getting a bail. So right now, we're looking like we're in pretty good shape, but that can turn south pretty quick if Vin has a pretty decent turn here. So we'll be back in a second for bottom of turn 5 Germans. So we are back for bottom of turn 5 for the Germans. Pretty good turn overall for Vin. He was able to unpin over here for the Panzer Grenadiers, and he dug them in. Fired a couple shots up there, but really didn't get anything to hit. The Pac 40 over here fired a couple shots in the Shermans that were standing there. He ended up hitting on one of them. I passed my save on the front armor for a bail, and then Vin failed his firepower, so I got off easy. But what panned out for Vin is the 2 IC in assaults. He went up and he assaulted the 1 bailed out tank that was sitting there, and then I counter assaulted with the 2 Shermans that were sitting over here on the objective. I ended up missing my attack to hit him, and then Vin ended up getting another hit, and he blew up, or he bailed out under the tank. And so I ended up failing my motivation, falling back. Vin was able to capture 2 of the tanks that were sitting up there. So overall, pretty good turn for Vin. Going in the top of turn 6 now, right?
Yep.
Yeah, top of turn 6. So I'm going to have to make a move over here with the Shermans to try to make Vin pick which objective he wants to take off the table. So we'll see how things go. Be back in a flash. So we are back for top of turn 6 for the Brits. Overall, pretty good turn for us in the movement phase. We ended up pushing up the 2 dingoes over there to help make a play on this objective here. We pushed our Daimler 1 and sawn off over the fence. We failed to get that Daimler 1 back in, and we failed to unpin the Universal Carriers over here. On this side of the table, we just stayed put with everything over here. Shooting phase, the 1 IC fired down at their 1 IC, and we weren't able really to do anything over there. Up over here, between the Firefly and the Sherman, we were able to peel off the 2 IC that was up there after he contested. Down on this side, we ended up assaulting after we fired a bunch of shots into the dug-in platoon that was over here. We did a couple I think we did 2 casualties in close combat, right, Vin? 2 casualties in close combat, and then after Vin had to disengage because he lost combat and he failed his motivation, we were able to capture another guy because he wasn't able to get more than 2 inches away, and we were able to push him off the objective. So we're gonna come back at the bottom of turn 6. Vin's gonna pull off 1 objective, and then he's gonna have to probably make a play at one or the other. But before that happens, company command test for Vin. Where do you want it, man?
Right here.
Pick your poison. He's good. All right. Vin lives to fight another round. So we'll be back in a second for bottom of turn 6. So we are back for bottom of turn 6 for the Germans. Vin ended up pulling out the middle objective over there, which was the obvious play. For movement, 1 IC didn't move. He pushed up because he had to contest this objective over here with this platoon, and the Pac 40 just kind of turned and take some shots. In the shooting phase, the Pac 40s and the SMG and rifles all fired into the dingoes right there, and they were able to blow up one of them. That's really all that happened here. Vin opted not to assault, just to stay and contest. So we'll be back in a second for top of turn 7 for the Brits, see what we can do here. So we are back here for the top of turn 7 for the Brits. Overall, pretty good turn for us, not the best. So we ended up moving up our Daimler over here, and we were able to get into assaults and take out the Pack 40. And then Vin failed his motivation with the remaining sergeant, and he ran off the table. Up over here, due to a hail of gunfire, we were able to whittle down the remaining of the Panzergrenadier platoon, and they're off the table as well. Wasn't able to unpin, wasn't able to get anybody back in their vehicles, but I don't think it matters because Vin's most likely going to pull this objective since it's lost. On this side, we moved the Sherman and the Firefly up over the rail tracks, and we moved up our 1IC, tried to assault. Vin ended up hitting on his defensive fire with the Panzerfaust and got a 5 up, so we ended up blowing up our 1IC. We still got 4 platoons left. Vin has nothing on the table except for his 1IC down here. So, Vin, if you want to roll your company command test.
All right, same spot.
Same spot. The reroll got it. All right, so Vin will be back here for the bottom of turn 7. So we're back for the bottom of turn 7. Vin's turn took 3 seconds for him to remove the objective over on that side of the table. And down here, he's just staying put, waiting for the Shermans to roll up. So we will be back in a second for top of turn 8. Last hurrah for the Shermans. And the 1IC, I mean, you're going to have to name him if he ends up holding this hill for the entire game. But yeah, we'll be back in a second, see how it goes. So we're back for the top of turn 8 for the Brits, and as you can see, the 1IC was taking off the objective. We rolled up, fired a couple cannon shots. One got through. Vin failed his save, and I failed my firepower, so that wasn't good. And then in the assaults, Vin was able to hit with the Faust again. He ended up getting a bail. I got my my sergeant in there, and he took a swing, and he ended up landing a hit and killing him. So that's a complete wipe for the Germans. I don't think, Vin, you didn't take a platoon off the table, did you? It was
only Neville Warpers.
Yeah, I guess Neville Warpers was the one that actually got to withdraw. Everybody else either got killed or retreated. So we'll be back in a second to go over the Endgame Recap. Like I said, British win, but it was a good game. So we'll be back in a second to go over how it ended. So we're back for the end of game recap. There's not that much left on the table over here on this flank and over there. I mean, I got a bunch of guys, but they're all bailed out. Overall, the battle plan for us was on this side, I wanted to use the speed of the Universal Carriers, the Dingoes, on that road over there and kind of just make a delayed late punch to that objective if I was able to, and then just support them with the Shermans on that side while the Daimlers just came up and took their time around here, hopefully all meeting it there at the same time. Overall, it worked out pretty good. The lack of punch by the Universal Carriers and the Dingoes, it's kind of tough to dig out the infantry teams with those guys, but they kept them pinned most of the game. Losing that Sherman platoon that early on kind of took the heat off this side, I think, as far as Vin having to worry about defending it as much as he did. I wasn't really able to dig anybody out or do any serious damage with those guys until we got into close combat. Up on this side, I deployed over here. I saw the Panthers over there, but I figured I'd be able to get a couple shots off with the Fireflies before I started making my push up with the Shermans. And then just delaying that as well gave the planes some time to come down here and just keep hitting across the back line for a couple turns. I mean, he came in for the first 3 or 4 turns? The first 3 turns, and then I don't think I got on the table with him again after that.
Damage anyway.
The first 3 turns he did do enough of damage to make it worth his while. As far as what I was looking at, when I saw the objective sitting in the middle of the table, I figured I'd push on it and hope to get an early win. I knew that was probably going to be the first one to get pulled off, and then it would make me commit to both flanks separately. So I figured I'd go in there, make a push. I knew I was going to have to weather some Pack 40 fire and some stuff like that. But after those Panthers went down, it was almost a no-brainer just to go up there and see what we can get away with. But Vin had a couple good close combats with the 2IC, and he was able to hold off with that part of that platoon that he broke off of from down there. So I think overall, Vin held that objective pretty well. Held it off long enough to where I wasn't able to go in there and get my grubby hands on it before turn 5 hit off. Over here, that 1IC, man.
That's all that was.
I don't know. That was just ridiculous. He blew up, 2 tanks? Bailed out 1 tank. He fought back, I think, 2 assaults by himself. It was just stupid.
Well, he killed, I think, 4 tanks by himself.
3 tanks by himself. 3 tanks by himself. Yeah, he
bailed 1.
He held the line by himself. Yeah, that was absolutely amazing. I couldn't believe I couldn't peel that guy off on that side. But yeah, this side, I thought I was going to get this objective a lot earlier than I did. But like I said, the 1IC, man, He was a superhero, man. That guy was ridiculous. Iron Cross. And then I guess, over here, yeah. Yeah. Like I said, overall, I think my attack plan worked out pretty good, being able to pressure both of the flanks and then up the middle as well. But, the lack of punch from some of these units over here is kind of hard to dig that infantry out. Vin, what were you thinking as far as defense goes and how you weathered the storm throughout the game?
As far as defense goes, it pretty much fell apart turn 1. Well, turn 2.
Turn 2, yeah, when you lost the flak tracks, the wagons, and the Panthers.
Panthers, yeah, I pretty much thought it was already over at that point.
Yeah, we talked about ending it there, but I told you had dug in infantry, man. Two full platoons. There's no point in giving it up yet.
Yeah, I'm so used to playing against the Soviets that I kind of figured,
It was a foregone conclusion. Just get overwhelmed. But like I said, man, I mean, the Shermans, it's only a handful of tanks. I mean, you get a couple lucky dice going your way in close combat, and then with the Overwatch with the Fausts and stuff, I mean, you can put a dent in a Sherman platoon pretty quick in close combat. So, yeah, it was worth hanging in there and fighting it out. Yeah, I don't think the numbers were. I mean, it looked like the amount of tanks on the table was going to be overwhelming numbers when you just had those 2 platoons left. But overall, I think your infantry actually held up pretty good. They were able to do some damage over there, and then especially over here and in the middle, like they did pretty good. But overall, pretty good game. Those Panthers, though, man, if they would have stayed on more than 2 turns and actually got some shots off, it would have been lights out. I think a lot sooner than this game would have been over like turn 3 or 4. I don't think I would have had anything to. Yeah. I don't think I would have had anything to really punch through that if they would have been able to do a little bit of damage on those platoons. But yeah, we'll be back next week, do it again. Pretty fun list. Probably bring out the Soviets again next time we play. But thanks for watching. See you guys again.